The U.S. Court of Appeals has made a major decision that is stirring debate across the legal and political landscape. In a ruling that has massive implications for free speech, the court has upheld the SEC's controversial gag rule, rejecting arguments that the rule violates the First Amendment. The case was brought by critics who say the SEC's rule essentially silences defendants who settle cases with the agency. Here's what happened, why it matters, and what comes next. The rule in question is the Securities and Exchange Commission's no-deny provision, often referred to as the gag order. It has existed for decades. Essentially, when someone settles with the SEC, often without admitting or denying the allegations, they are also required to agree not to publicly deny the charges ever again. This means if someone thinks they were wrongly accused or treated unfairly, they are legally barred from saying so. Critics call it a violation of free speech, claiming that the government cannot force someone to remain silent, especially after a case has been resolved. But the SEC argues it's an important tool for protecting the integrity of its enforcement process. And now, the Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals has sided with the SEC, ruling that the gag rule does not violate the First Amendment. The court's decision came in a case involving Christopher R. Edeh, a man who settled a case with the SEC but then wanted to speak publicly about his experience. Edeh challenged the gag rule in court, with support from the New Civil Liberties Alliance (NCLA), a group that focuses on protecting constitutional freedoms. They argued that the rule amounted to a lifetime censorship order. But the appeals court disagreed. In a 2-1 decision, the judges ruled that Edeh, and others like him, voluntarily accepted the gag as part of a legal settlement. Because the agreement was made voluntarily, the court said, it doesn't count as unconstitutional censorship. The court said, quote, "The SEC's no-deny provision is a condition of settlement, not a government-imposed punishment. Individuals who wish to deny the allegations are free to go to trial instead of settling." But this ruling has not ended the controversy. Civil liberties groups, lawyers, and free speech advocates have voiced alarm. They argue that the decision creates a dangerous precedent where government agencies can use settlements to silence critics indefinitely. One critic said, "This isn't just about securities law, it's about whether the government can force you to give up your voice forever, just to avoid a trial." Supporters of the SEC say otherwise. They argue that the gag rule is necessary to prevent confusion in the public markets, and that allowing people to settle with the agency and then publicly claim innocence would undermine the SEC's authority and credibility. One former SEC official noted, if people could settle, avoid trial, pay a fine, and then go out and tell the world the SEC was wrong, the public wouldn't know who to believe. Still, many legal experts warn this could be a slippery slope. If other agencies adopt similar gag clauses, it could weaken public accountability across the federal system. Here's some quick context. The SEC enforces laws around the stock market, corporate disclosures, and investor protections. Its enforcement division often relies on settlements, where companies or individuals don't admit guilt but agree to pay fines or follow certain rules. The no-deny provision has been around since 1972, but only recently has it become a target for lawsuits. In 2023, multiple lawsuits were filed challenging the rule as unconstitutional. This case marks the first time a federal appeals court has ruled directly on the matter. The lone dissenting judge on the panel raised strong objections, saying the decision effectively turns government power into a tool for silencing critics, and called the gag coerced silence. He added that many people feel forced to settle with the SEC due to the enormous financial cost of going to trial, even when they believe they did nothing wrong. So what does this mean going forward? Well, for now, the SEC's gag rule remains in full force, and anyone settling with the agency must agree never to deny wrongdoing, or face serious legal consequences. But the battle may not be over. The NCLA and other groups are already signaling that they may try to take the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. If the High Court agrees to hear the case, it could lead to a major ruling on free speech versus regulatory enforcement, with broad implications across government. In the meantime, critics are calling on Congress to get involved. Some lawmakers have said they're concerned the SEC is abusing its power, and that the gag rule should be reconsidered. Whether Congress takes up the issue remains to be seen. This ruling may have quieted some voices, but it's also ignited a national conversation about the limits of free speech, the power of government agencies, and the rights of Americans who choose to settle legal disputes rather than fight them in court. One thing is clear: this story is far from over.